The year is 1997. The world is reeling from the scientific implications of the Roslin Institute successfully cloning a sheep. What was once considered the realm of science fiction was now reality, and the possible applications to medical science was staggering. But fuck that! Our story takes place in my cousin's house where I was getting royally screwed. Not literally, because in 1997 I was 3 and that would have been a crime. No, my metaphorical violation was in that N64 classic Goldeneye. In a year packed full of amazing things like sheep cloning, Steve Jobs returning to Apple, and George Clooney being granted his birthright title of sexiest man alive, why the heck is Goldeneye a standout mention? There are these reasons 3. 1. Goldeneye released a year and a half after the movie it was based on, meaning it had little brand relevance. 2. The team working on Goldeneye had little experience working on games at all. And 3. Console shooters were not as common in 1997 as they are today. Needless to say, Goldeneye was more of a gamble than any high-stakes poker game 007 himself has been to. Why is this oddly intense to watch? But it paid off hard for Rare. A company who had such faith in the project, they kept funding it after Nintendo pieced out on it. Now, for the outside observer, Rare at this point were at the height of their powers. They were fresh off the success of the Donkey Kong Country trilogy and the arcade juggernaut Killer Instinct, but licensed tie-in games were still pretty hit and miss. Yet Rare pulled the Beatles and said, "We are better than Jesus," and sought to make a good movie tie-in. Not only did they do that, they also made the third best-selling N64 game, with over 8 million copies sold. Now, quick math lesson for anybody not paying attention. An N64 cartridge cost $50 or so back in the day. So 50 multiplied by 8 million, okay, carry the 1. Oh yeah, equals a shit ton of money. That's Scrooge McDuck levels of cash at least. But what about Goldeneye the game? Has it stood the test of time? Yeah, no, not even a little. But to be fair, this is one of the first shooters designed specifically for a console, and that console was clearly not developed with humans in mind. I mean, just look at this controller. While Goldeneye may not have aged well, without it we wouldn't have games like Perfect Dark, the Time Splitter trilogy, or even Halo, which perfected the console shooter control scheme. Just take a minute to imagine a world without these landmark titles. In fact, I'll show you what it looks like. So the Cuban Missile Crisis is kicking off and JFK is all like, not on my watch, so he calls up Khrushchev and tells him to knock that shit off. But Khrushchev is all like, make me scrub. So as we know from history, Jay and Nikki met up for a no-hold-barred 3-stock deathmatch slappers only to see who was backing off Cuba. But halfway through, Nikki's all like, maybe we aren't so different. He and Jay share a glass of Sunny D and talk their differences out and decide not to nuke everything. Now imagine if Goldeneye didn't exist, they'd have to resort to a game of Joust on the Atari. I want to take a quick minute to talk about licensed games real quick. The Atari wasn't just a random example, I promise, because we need to talk about another licensed game, E.T. for the Atari 2600. This game is pointed to as the breaking point for the video game crash of the 80s. Whether or not E.T. is a good game is irrelevant for what we're talking about today, because irregardless of where you fall on that argument, I think we can all agree, short of the name E.T., there's nothing about this game that screams, I am a game based on this movie, which is an issue a lot of licensed games have, both the good and the not so good. Back in the day, if you were licensing a game, the immediate genre you'd use was the platformer. I mean, during the 2D era, mascot platformers were probably the most saturated genre of video game, so it made sense to play it safe and slap that license with the Jumpman coat of paint and call it a day. So while DuckTales is a great game, I can't say I remember the episode where Scrooge McDuck used his umbrella like a pogo stick to kill dudes on the moon. That's not to say platformers were the only type of game hit up for licensed tie-ins. Arcades were still super lucrative up until the 2000s, so you needed a quarter muncher. Enter the beat 'em up. Now I love the Simpsons arcade cabinet, I even beat it at a barcade a few months back with some friends. But once again, I don't recall a Simpsons episode where Mr. Burns kidnaps Maggie and the Simpsons go on a violent rampage to get her back, culminating in a smackdown with Mecha Burns. Tonally, these games don't mesh with their source material. Like, the game is fun as heck, but I don't look at the Simpsons and think this is funny, but why aren't they beating people up more often? Because as Family Guy showed us, that is a joke that very quickly loses steam, much like recent Family Guy and Simpsons episodes.
Oh shit! Burn! Burn! So I'm just really proud of what I've done today. Plus, I really hate you.
Now that's not to say these genres can't work. For instance, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtles in Time totally meshes. The Foot Clan work as disposable bad guys, and having a big climactic fight with one of Krang's minions at the end of the level totally feels like the cartoon. So what the heck does any of this have to do with Goldeneye? I mentioned before how Goldeneye was a pretty instrumental game in terms of FPS design, but there are some design aspects I feel got left behind in 1997. The best way I can describe it is that this game feels like a James Bond game. I know that's a groan-inducing phrase, but I'm not saying a game like this makes you feel like 007. Rather that even without knowing the name of the game or who the main character is, it can convey what it's based on in every design aspect. So obviously the opening of the game has the infamous Bond gun barrel opening, but it then takes you to the save selection screen. Now this could have been just a simple file select screen, but instead each save file resembles a dossier, and entering into the mission select shows a film reel, almost like it's an actual debriefing before a secret mission. Stepping into the missions gives you a sick helicopter shot, and it ends into Bond's POV like surveillance footage, again adding to the idea of being a covert operative. One thing I think is really cool is the difficulty selector, which is grouped into Agent, Secret Agent 00 and 007. Instead of easy, normal, hard stuff, they continue to draw on the source material. Each mission has Bond armed with his iconic Walther PPK with a silencer, meaning on-site procurement of more powerful weapons is a must. But even this little guy can insta-kill goons with a well-placed headshot, once again signifying that Bond is like a surgical scalpel when compared to Doomguy's jackhammer approach. Now there are two levels that stand out to me, not just for their design, but more so for their overall inclusion. These are Aztec Complex and Egyptian Temple. But wait, Kevin, I thought you said deviating from the source material was a bad thing. Goldeneye the movie doesn't have a scene where Bond stops a rocket launching a converted Aztec temple, or a bit where Brosnan goes tomb raiding for Christopher Lee's gold-plated piece. True, but the thing I love about these levels is that they draw on the years of Bond movies. For instance, Jaws is the henchman from The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker, and the Aztec Temple level draws heavily from Moonraker. Egyptian Temple isn't directly related to any Bond film, but features Baron Samedi from Live and Let Die. And the golden gun is clearly Scaramanga's signature weapon from the iconically named Dude with the Pimp-Ass Piece. This not only shows that Rare understood the Bond world, but also shows to me actual adoration for the source material. They didn't need to add these deep cuts or kind of obscure references to past movies, but they did. And honestly, it not only adds to the multiplayer with weapons like the Moonraker laser and golden gun, but the actual levels themselves, minus Jaws, are super fun post-game challenges. If there's one part of the game that truly exemplifies my point, and truthfully is the reason I started writing this script, it's the music. Holy shit, GoldenEye's original soundtrack is amazing. Now, if I haven't made it clear, I love the James Bond films. I've watched them since I was a kid. And the only thing more synonymous with the series than casual murder, womanizing, and alcohol abuse is fat-ass beats. I mentioned this as Kirkhope actually used the prior Bond themes as a reference when constructing the GoldenEye soundtrack, which shows as the tunes in GoldenEye sound like a James Bond film score, without being derivative. This is best exemplified by Kirkhope's own rearrangement of the famous Bond theme, which added punchy drums and the face-melting guitars. But you can also see the allusions to the bigger pop songs associated with Bond. For example, let's take Duran Duran's View to a Kill, written for the 007 movie of the same name. Now I want you to pay close attention to the drums used in the Frigate mission. Yeah, those drums are pretty much the same, but the rest of the composition is new for Bond, making it familiar without being well-tread ground. From my knowledge, this isn't something most other licensed games do, probably because sampling actual music associated with the license seems redundant. But you can tell the soundtrack for Spider-Man PS4 has emulated the bombastic orchestral arrangements of the Avengers. Yet for some reason won't pay homage to Danny Elfman's iconic theme from the Raimi movies. Nor does Spider-Man's UI scream Spider-Man. That's not to say that the UI and soundtrack are bad, just that they don't capture the essence I'd associate with the source material. Similar to how I wouldn't picture the Simpsons TV show as a beat-em-up. Not a bad finished product, it's just not a perfect pairing for the licensed property in my opinion. Whereas Goldeneye is kind of firing on all cylinders. For any facet of the game they can draw inspiration from, they do. From the menus, music, weapons, even the frickin' names and difficulty options, everything is steeped in James Bond. I think that's why so many people overlook a lot of Goldeneye's more outdated gameplay mechanics due to its impeccable game feel. While we have gotten licensed games in recent years that break the mediocre mold, they still suffer from a lack of clear identity. This is due to not capitalizing and using every aspect of their design to invoke the sense that they are all they can be. But what do you guys think? Am I overthinking it? Will licensed games always be shovelware crap and Goldeneye is just an exception? Or did we perhaps leave some design ideas behind in 1997? Or heck, maybe there's a licensed game I missed that does as good a job as this game? Let me know in the comments below. Oh, and if you like this insane rant about a game from 1998, why not subscribe? I do more cries for help like this all the time.